Perfect. Let's roll. I'm looking forward to the answer.
Yeah.
Welcome to Cloud Realities Live, an original podcast from Capgemini, and this week co-sponsored by AWS. We are live from the Venetian in Las Vegas at AWS reInvent 2025. I'm Dave Chapman.
I'm Esmee van der Giezen.
And I'm delighted to say that joining us is Scott Mullins, who's the MD of Financial Services at AWS. Scott, how are you doing? Good to see you.
I'm doing fantastic. Good to see you, Dave. Good to see you, Esmee. Great to be with you.
Brilliant. And it's reInvent time of year again. So how's 2025 been for you?
Well, it's the most wonderful time of the year. Not quite Christmas, but pre-Christmas for us, which
close.
is reInvent.
Pretty close.
We love the fact that reInvent every year is the week after Thanksgiving here in the U.S. and then the lead up to the holiday season. It really is, for me, the most wonderful time of the year.
Right.
I've been to every reInvent except for the second one.
Really?
In the first one, I was a customer. In the second, I was working for a bank that had no idea what the cloud was just yet, so there was no way to go to reInvent. And then from the third one on, I've been an employee at AWS.
So tell me what that feels like then, because you've seen from a very small start to becoming an absolutely enormous organization. How's the journey been?
I think the most important thing I could tell you about reInvent is what hasn't changed about reInvent. Now, obviously, we look at the first reInvent, 5,000 people just at the Venetian, an experiment really by AWS to understand if we could do something different in this space, have a learning conference instead of a sales conference.
Yeah.
And that was really Andy Jassy's founding requirement for AWS marketing, is that we could do this if we made it a learning conference. And it still is, 13 years later, a learning conference.
I think it is such an inspired idea. And I've got to say, it's one of the things that inspired things like Cloud Realities in the first place, to create something that was focused on thought leadership first and foremost, and willing to go with wherever it needed to go. And I think that the buzz you get at reInvent, which is undeniable, and when you compare it to some of your competitors' events and things like that, of course they all have their pluses and minuses and things like that, but there is a very unique feeling here at reInvent, which is common every year, and I think it does center on the fact that it focuses on kind of educating developers and getting developers excited, and or getting executives excited, depending on which part of the conference you're engaging with.
Do you remember when you were in school and you'd go away for summer holiday and you had your plans and you went and did your thing, and then you came back in that first week of school, and the thing that you asked everybody is, what did you do this summer? What were you up to? What did you learn? What did you experience? That's reInvent. Because we all come back together at this time of year and we share the stories of how we've used AWS services to do amazing things throughout the year. We hear about all the new things, features, functionality, new services that are coming out. We all go away for another year. We put those things to work, and then we come back again and we're like, hey, what'd you do this summer?
Right. Now, have you been to the tattoo booth?
I don't know that we want to talk about that on this particular book. I've not. I was walking down the hallway the other day with one of my team members, and they were talking about the tattoo booth and the piercing booth, and they were talking about the long lines to sign up for this.
For sure.
I've seen everything about reInvent evolve, from a hot wing eating contest at the first one, the Tatanka, to now we have a tattoo booth. So listen,
I think that's the good thing about it.
Amazon is
got an edge.
Well, we're the everything store, right? You can get anything that you want, including a tattoo of a pizza slice.
Yeah. Right.
Yes.
Yeah, I honestly think it's some of its differentiating characteristic is the willingness to kind of embrace all of the cultural aspects of the thing.
Well, look, it's got its own culture, and I think AWS has its own culture. And
right.
The people that are here, the people that invest in understanding what our services are, the application of those services across any industry, it's a skill set. It's also a culture. And I think that there is true value in that in the workforce. And it's obvious when we talk to folks about talent, people come here to recruit. They come to look for talented people that have not only the skill sets, but the mindset to put these services to work.
Is that the reason why you started working at AWS?
I started working at AWS because before I was a product manager at a company called NASDAQ. I ran a couple of businesses for NASDAQ, and I ran our trade reporting facility and our post-trade risk management solutions. And I had been asked to build a business case for a brand new product at NASDAQ that was a data and analytics platform. And so we wrote the business case. We found out that our data centers at the time wouldn't support it. We didn't have any additional space in those data centers, nor did we have the budget to go out and buy new space or build a new data center. But we liked our idea so much that we said to ourselves, hey, why don't we try this newer technology? This is 2012, this newer technology called cloud. And so we reached out to AWS, put a cold LinkedIn message to a guy named Adam Slivsky, who was the chief operating officer at the time and then became CEO sometime after. And we said, hey, we've got this idea, and we'd like to see if you'd like to work on it with us. And they invited us out to Seattle. We spent 2 days with them. It was 2 days of us doing a lot of talking, Amazon doing a lot of listening, and we were kind of concerned that they didn't either like us or that they didn't understand what we were trying to say. And on that second day, AWS came back, and they had listened to everything that we had said in that first day, and they had gone home and they had started working on the problems. And they came back with suggestions and ways of working together. And what that led to was us taking that business idea and building and launching a brand new product at NASDAQ within 3 months, working with AWS. Now, what's most compelling about that is our product development lifecycle at the time was 18 to 24 months. And we built something new in a scrappy fashion in 3 months. That changed my life because I knew from that moment that this particular tool set was going to change the way that we could work in financial services. And so when I had the opportunity to join AWS, when they invited me to come help them really speak the language of financial services, to explain the value of those tools to a financial institution, and then carry feedback back to our service teams from those customers on what they needed, I said, I've got to go do it. And I've been doing it for 12 years now.
It's the best way to recruit. That's your experience, and that's why you're invested.
I became a believer.
Yeah.
I saw the power of what it could do for my company then. And that was the very kind of ground level for NASDAQ. And now they're obviously one of our most amazing partners in financial services. And we've done great things with them now for over 15 years.
We'll return to financial services as an industry in a second. But I want to just sort of return to reInvent very briefly and just see what has really stood out to you in terms of this year's announcement set. There's a much needed shift towards maturing, scaling, deepening of AI tool sets. I think that's a much needed thing because the rest, it feels like adopting organizations are ready to move on from pure proof of concept phase and get into something of a bigger, more implementable. Let me rephrase that. A sort of a bigger and more scaled implementation that obviously needs security considerations and things like that. What's resonating with you this year, do you think?
I think Matt did a wonderful job in his keynote of outlining really 3 key pillars for any builder to focus on. First was that infrastructure layer, making sure you have enterprise-grade infrastructure that gives you the right foundation, the right toolkit to build from.
Right.
On top of that, a focus on data and intellectual property. Number 1, securing both data and intellectual property and making sure that only the people that you want to have access to that have access to it, but then also making it useful. And I think the advancements that we're seeing in artificial intelligence, specifically agentic AI,
right.
It changes the game on what it means to organize your data and use it effectively. And then third, agents. And that's a stack.
Yep.
Foundation layer, data and your intellectual property, and then agents that begin to change the way that work works. And so to me, Matt's keynote was really all about changing the way that work works. From the very opening kind of montage that he showed to there was a snippet in the middle of the development team that had a delivery they were doing. They were 4 weeks out, and everybody, it's kind of funny. You heard the laughter and some of the groans and some of the, oh yeah, I've been there, as that team kind of went through that little vignette that they had. And when you think about what's going to be possible now with our frontier agents and the 3 that we've released around, Kira Developer and one for security. And as we keep building those out, it's just going to bring more capabilities to bear that help builders change the way that work works. So to me, the most fundamental announcements for financial services were probably around the additions and features to Bedrock Agent Core. And so one of the key things in financial services that everybody brings up, and we sometimes talk around it, is compliance.
Right.
And compliance can be kind of a ethereal word, and people kind of use that word as, oh, I can't do it because of compliance, or I have to comply with something. And we don't really necessarily take it to the next step of, okay, well, what problem are we trying to solve other than compliance? And when you look at the announcements around policy, Bedrock Agent Core policy, and being able to establish policies by which an agent must act, what they can do, what they can't do, what they can access, what they can't access, what they have the power to act upon, that's exactly how financial institutions work today. They have operational policies, they have supervisory policies, they have governance policies. And so being able to actually have a feature that mirrors what an organization does in their current workflow today, super important.
Right.
The second thing is, when you look at the other feature that we announced in Bedrock Agent Core, which is evaluate, being able to actually make sure that those agents are following the policy that they need to do. That's also a critical component of regulatory compliance and any kind of compliance from a policy and procedure perspective in a financial institution. So I'm super excited about those two features coming to Bedrock Agent Core.
A lot in that now, and we'll talk about what you're seeing in your client organizations very shortly. But before we go on to that, Ez, what's been standing out for you the day 2, day 3?
Well, actually, I wanted to touch upon Cairo. Scott just mentioned it, but it's like introducing a fully spec-driven agentic development environment, right? So your intent, your architecture, your constraints, and then frontier agents generate the code, the tests, the documentations, even the infrastructure. So that's amazing. But what I was thinking about, if you look at crypto and blockchain development, and what's been holding it back is that you always had incredible innovative ideas, but often fragile engineering processes that held it back to get really into blockchain and crypto in a mature way. So small teams, fast iterations, but inconsistent testing, security gaps, very uneven development maturity. But this next step, Kiro, is going to change that, actually. I think that it shows that it's now capable of really unlocking processes or new ways of doing business because of technology. I think that's so fascinating. What's your view on that, Scott?
Well, I don't think that applies just to blockchain or digital assets. Those problems, everything you outlined, Esmee, is a problem that exists in any financial institution. And it probably, if we're honest, is a problem that exists in any enterprise development shop. There's not always consistent best practices around documentation and testing and test scripts. I think that, again, going back to that vignette, that whole kind of moment around pen testing, right? It can be, your mileage may vary depending upon where you're working and what the shop is. We don't have to worry about that anymore. When I think about what's now possible with these frontier agents, we're taking away that undifferentiated heavy lifting and enabling developers to focus on value creation. And I think that's going to be super powerful in that space that you mentioned, but also applicable across all parts of the financial services industry and other industries.
Right. So let's stick on the industry then. Like, what's your current bellwether on where financial services as an industry are at the moment in terms of their post-cloud adoption, let's call it?
What is post-cloud adoption? So
sort of cloud native onwards. So the move to cloud, the stack that is therefore enabled as a result of cloud, the ways of working and operating as a result of working in a sort of modern tech environment versus a traditional tech environment.
Got it. Yeah, look, we're in the second decade of cloud adoption by the financial services industry. And I think we really do two things. I'll talk about this a lot at AWS. We do two things at AWS. We do what a lot of people will call transformation or modernization. I happen to live in a 130-year-old house, so I do a lot of renovation in my house. And so I call this renovation. I don't call it transformation or modernization because those are kind of ethereal terms. It's renovation. You're taking an entity. I was just talking to a large insurer on the African continent, founded in 1845, right? Been around for a very long time. They're 50 years older than my house. when you think about that entity's been around so long because it has value. It creates value. They have a brand. They have gravity in the world, not just in that part of the globe. And so they don't want to completely change what they have. They want to renovate. They want to continually take the value that they have and invest in the modernization of that, the improvement of that, the ability to continue to do business. And so we've been very busy renovating the financial services industry around the world. And part of that renovation is not just, retiring data centers and bringing in AWS services to underpin, some of the most mission critical workloads in the world, like core banking services or underwriting or policy administration or payments rails or clearing and settlement in capital markets or the actual matching engines that match trades. We power all of that today. But we're also renovating the way that workforces work and the tools with which they work. And that, I think, is the most important part of this, is the reskilling of the industry. Human beings do not like change. We are creatures of habit. And when you think about the change that's occurred, yes, it's impressive that we have these new capabilities and these tool sets, but what's most impressive is the change that we've made to how work works. And now that's about to go on steroids. Because the other thing that we do, in addition to renovation, is that we do innovation. We help people create net new value. We help people tackle new challenges that they're facing, pursue new opportunities. I'll give you an example. We have a customer who's a large global systemically important bank. They're in every part of the world, but they don't have every part of their business in every part of the world. They had a very specific place in the world where they didn't do retail banking. And so we helped them actually build a brand new digital retail bank in this specific country. And we did that in a very short period of time. They were able to ramp that brand in that country to be the number one digital bank in that country in about a 2-year time period. And now they're looking to expand that to other parts of continental Europe. And so that's innovation. That's taking something that you didn't have and building those capabilities very quickly with the right tool set, the right talent, and then being able to add new value. And that's now going to be something that is supercharged with the advent of agents.
So when you talk about that, the supercharge that's coming and the changing nature of human capability in those organizations that have started to evolve over time, do you have a take yet on what the sort of human AI hybrid version of those organizations is going to need to think about?
That's what everybody's trying to figure out right now. The conversations I've been having this week are really about changing the way that work works. I just came from a conversation with a customer, and I asked them a pointed question of, what do you want to do with agents? I ask people that question so that I can understand where they are on this particular journey, and understand if they're pointed in the right direction. Anybody that tells me that they kind of want to keep an existing process and then build an agent and kind of slap it on the side as a widget, they're not going in the right direction. You have to have the conviction, and I told this customer this, you have to have the conviction that you're going to change an entire workflow. You have to put that workflow on the workbench, decompose it, and understand, where can I take tasks away from a human being where there's no value generated from that. You're simply just part of a process, and hand that process to an agent or a string of agents for an agentic system. I'll give you an example. Think about anti-money laundering surveillance. This is something I did previously in my career. I was responsible for surveillance for a large broker-dealer. What happens is you use a piece of software. That piece of software probably has an algorithm in it, and that algorithm is responsible for looking at different patterns and then spitting out something that says, hey, maybe this could be something that's fraudulent. A human being then has to take that, an analyst takes it and goes, it's either a false positive, meaning it was kind of something that was erroneous, or it might be something worth investigating. And then either that person passes it along to another person, or they take it on and stop doing the ingest part and then do an investigation. That investigation probably involves going to different systems, whether it's the customer information system or the journal ledger system, to look at the transactions, because it might be micro depository activity, and then making a judgment call. Is this something possibly nefarious? If it isn't, great, put it in the bin, If it is possibly nefarious, guess what I have to do now? I have to decide if I need to, from a regulatory obligation perspective, file a suspicious activity report with an authority. Either I need to stop my investigation work and then go and begin to write that suspicious activity report, or I hand it to another human being. When I was doing this for a living, a typical analyst could handle probably 35 alerts in a day, maybe 5 investigations in the course of an 8-hour workday, and maybe write a couple of suspicious activity reports. Today, we don't even need a human in any of that, because now with agentic systems, you can build agents for each part of that function. You can have an agent that does ingest. You can have an agent that does the investigation. You can have an agent that makes the judgment call on whether or not it's actually a suspicious activity, and then an agent that writes the actual report and files it with the appropriate regulatory authority, relieving the human being of all those tasks and being able to actually focus on the quality control of the entire thing and making judgment calls. And so that is how I think organizations that are successful now are looking at it, is how do I change the way that work works? How do I put workflows on the bench and fundamentally drive value out of changing those workflows?
You would think that financial services is quite ahead compared to other industries, because customer journeys and processes, you've been working on those for quite some years now.
Yeah, I think there's an opportunity to actually look at these workflows because they are made for process improvement. And a lot of that process improvement to date has been done with machine learning. Right? You take a machine learning algorithm and you look to kind of compress the work, because you can take an algorithm and say, oh, that's false positive, false positive, false positive, and get that workload down. Now you can make much more substantial improvements to those processes because you're actually taking the human being out of the loop.
What I was going to ask is, like, in the sort of work that you were just describing there, particularly around process and kind of reinvention process, is that where AWS Transform is fitting in for you?
Oh, I didn't even talk about Transform. That was on my list to talk to you about as well. I'm very excited about Transform from the perspective of the expansion of Transform with Customize. Right? It is Transform, Customize. And thinking about legacy code bases and the ability to enable now any institution, and for me, specifically financial institutions, who have lots and lots of legacy code bases sitting around, and they don't have a lot of documentation on those code bases. They don't have a lot of the people that probably wrote that. And they typically will deprioritize the modernization of those things over time because there's just not enough time. There's not enough budget. And you kind of always end up glomming things onto the top of the list.
Right.
This is going to make the ability to assess and either dispose of or upgrade and make cloud native so much easier and so much faster for organizations. And so even in the last 2 days, I've had lots of conversations with customers who are like, I need that. I have needed that because we never have the time, we never have the talent, we never have the money to invest in actually truly decommissioning a lot of things or modernizing things that we want to keep around.
Great. And when you look, maybe just to bring our conversation today to a bit of a conclusion, when you look out over the next 12 to 18 months, from within the FS sphere, what kind of rates of adoption are you kind of hoping to see?
Accelerated adoption, I'll just say it that way. And what I mean by that is this, I'll tell you a story. 3 years ago at reInvent, I met with an insurer, and they said, Scott, we want to build an assistant for underwriting. Underwriting is a very special form of thing that's important in insurance, and it's unique. And we're never, ever going to take the underwriter out of the underwriting decision. An underwriter at our company will always make the underwriting decision. But we want to build an assistant that can help with the gathering of documentation, the analysis of documents, and all the data points that you need to make an underwriting decision. That was 3 years ago. And we helped them build this assistant. This week, Tuesday, same company, same conversation, but it went this way this time. Scott, underwriting is too much of an art form. We must make it a science. We must enable agents to make underwriting decisions. And then have an underwriter review those to make sure that they're consistent. So what I meant by accelerated is people once saw the risk envelope, and I'm holding my hands pretty wide, the risk envelope this size. And as we bring new capabilities and new tools like policy, like evaluate, like transform, like frontier agents, as we bring new capabilities, what's now happening is that risk envelope continues to shrink. And in financial services, when you can shrink the risk envelope, when you have clarity, when you get clarity, you get confidence. When you have confidence, you're comfortable. And when you're comfortable, you can commit to doing really amazing things. And I think we're going to see an acceleration of changing the way that work actually works based on the confidence our customers are having now.
I also thought it was really interesting in your example there, the shift of the position of the underwriter and the acceptance of the fact that the role between the agent and the underwriter themselves, or the agent and the human, is going to shift, and it's like a growing confidence in terms of the technology and the potential of the technology, and therefore the perspective of the person who's having the conversation with you. That's quite fascinating. That's a big shift, I thought.
It's change.
Yeah,
it's real change.
Very good. Well, on that note, thank you very much for taking some time out of a busy diary to come talk to us today, and for putting up with many interruptions from our failing technology, it seems, which is very unusual. But thanks very much, Scott.
Delighted to join you. Don't forget what Werner says. Technology fails.
I think we've demonstrated that quite well in the last half an hour.
Yeah.
But before you go, we've been asking all of your colleagues this week about the intersection of science fact and science fiction, in the sense of film, TV, books have been talking about, kind of technological ideas in one way, shape or form for 50, 60, 70, 100 years. And you can go down now onto the expo floor and you can buy most of the technology that's covered, with the exception maybe of space travel, but most of the technology that has been in sci-fi for years is becoming commonplace. And we're wondering, does any film, book or TV stand out for you as a good representation of tech, the tech industry, or a particularly bad one?
Oh, I'm going to go bad.
Yeah, great. There's the fun ones.
The Jetsons.
And what is bad in that for you? Is it the flying car?
Where's the flying car?
Yeah, I ask that question a lot.
Where's the robo-maid?
Right.
Where's the floating house in the sky?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, all of that.
We've been disappointed.
We've been deceived.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
By Hanna-Barbera. Yeah. Thank you. I mean, come on. I had expectations.
Yeah, me too.
They've not been met.
Well, I've talked about this a couple of times this week, because weirdly, flying cars have come up quite a lot in these conversations, and my perennial frustration with the current slew of flying cars and technology is they look like bad helicopters. They don't look like flying cars.
Yeah, true. But also, look, the flying car is like the low-hanging fruit.
Right.
Think about the doors in the Jetsons. When George walked through a door, there was never a door handle. There wasn't a thing you have to wave your hand at. There wasn't a button you push and then you wait for the arm to open the door. I get so frustrated in our office because of those doors. I just end up pushing the door open.
Yeah.
When he walked up to a door, just went, shoop, 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 shoop,
right,
open,
right.
close. I mean, you could think of all the simple things in the Jetsons and just be frustrated by the fact that we don't have those things.
Star Trek had doors like that as well.
Yes.
And it would mean you would have to sort of build a thing that went into your wall and have some machinery in the wall. Is that weirdly? I'm not one of those people that kind of looks at something and starts trying to deconstruct it straight away. But I also like those doors, and I'm like, could I put those doors in my house? And I've also got an old house. It's like trying to retrofit those doors into an old house. That seems like an expensive exercise, I suggest.
I would imagine.
Look, on that note, thanks again, Scott.
Thank you, folks.
Want to dive deeper in today's topic and what they might mean for you and your business? Drop us a line at cloudrealities@capgemini.com. We're all on Substack and on LinkedIn, so connect, DM, and send us questions for future episodes. And hey, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. It really helps us improve the show. A big thanks to Scott, our sounds and editing visits Ben and Louis, producer Marcel, and of course you for tuning in. See you in another Reinvent Reality soon.